First of all, I'd just like to thank everybody for staying here. This is the last panel event this afternoon. I think on the app it may have said that this will go on till 6. That's wrong. It won't. It'll go on until about 5:30, so don't worry, it's going to be fairly short and sweet, we hope. We would also like you, if you can, to think about what bravery means to you. What you've seen that might have been brave in the last day, what you see tomorrow in terms of bravery. And if you can just make sure that you tweet on the IIeX hashtag, which is on the back of here, and then after that just do hashtag brave, we would love to catch up and just read what it is that you're finding is brave in the industry today. So we'd really like if you could do that. Okay, so I'm Fiona Blades from Met. This is John Griffiths from Planning Above and Beyond. Thank you for being here. John, over to you to talk a little bit about the awards before we introduce our illustrious panelists.
Thank you, Fiona. So it's good that we had an award this afternoon. Awards mostly, I find, seem to be about the same sorts of things. They're all about cleverness, innovation, and profitability, I guess. So it seemed important to have awards for something different. And the awards that we want to talk about this afternoon are about bravery, which is a much wider category than you might have thought about. And we feel very grateful to IIeX and the Green Book organization who got behind the Bravery Awards because they're different and they perceive them as being essential. So we want to say a big thank you to them for the way in which they've supported the awards at their various events around the world in this last year and a half. So that's just a little bit of introduction to that. Do I need to say more about the Bravery Awards at this stage, what they are?
No, I think let's carry on.
Let's introduce our illustrious panel, and I shall push out in bravery. I'll introduce two of the people on our panel. First of all, we have Peter Harrison from Brain Juicer. Peter Harrison, are you creative director? Your job title?
Creative director.
Yeah, creative director. An illustrious title which is becoming more and more common within the research industry, and Peter Harrison is one of the first creative directors. He announced that the bravest thing he's ever done is to have a child, so clearly he'll tell us a bit more about that, no doubt. Sean Adams started as a planner in ad agencies. When I first met him, it was working as a consultant in Sydney, but he now comes back and enjoys the title of Commercial Head of Insight of News UK. And he'll be helping us out in the hackathon tomorrow with a real live thorny client problem. Please come back and help us with that tomorrow. Fiona.
Thank you, John. And I'd like to introduce Kristen Luck, who is a serial entrepreneur. She is also ranked as one of the top 100 sales and marketing experts to follow on Twitter. So make sure you start following her now. She believes that bravery is cultivated through diligent practice. So if you don't use it, you lose it. And she is also one of our winners, our past winners for the Ginny Valentine Badge of Courage Awards for fearlessly advocating gender equality. So welcome to Kristen. And then we have Cornelio Wilson from Pernod Ricard. And he had a very interesting start to his career. He was designing nuclear power plants and radar systems. And at that point, he was very brave. He left that career to do his MBA and to start a new career from scratch. So very warm welcome to you as well, Cornelio. Over to you, John, let's get this panel started.
Bravery. A broad topic, and we've certainly found, having run this award scheme for a number of years, that we've constantly been surprised by the types of bravery which have been shown in the research industry. We've been surprised. Every year, something new comes up. The question, though, is the need for bravery changing? And that's really the question that we wanted to address to our illustrious panel this evening. Do we need different kinds of bravery, or possibly, as people using big data eliminate every possible kinds of risk, is it possible that the need for bravery is going away forever? Could I start with Peter?
By all means. Okay, so last year Brain Juicer worked on a project for 3 Mobile on their ad testing for the famous pony advert that went on to be very successful. And we had the best client quote that I've ever heard, which was, You helped us be brave, but not stupidly brave. And I think that's exactly what market research should do. It should help clients make bold, brave decisions, but not ones that are completely nuts. However, I think that too often the market research industry has a culture of playing it safe. It has a culture of helping clients avoid massive cock-ups rather than a culture of helping them do something amazing and something incredible. So I think actually research is too guilty of helping clients be too safe and too mediocre at the expense of doing things which are too exciting.
Apart from being brave by not having my picture up there, the other thing I was going to say was that I've always liked the phrase poacher turned gamekeeper, and this is the very rare occasion I actually get to use it, because I began as a researcher and now I'm a research buyer. So I can actually see things from both sides of the fence. And I guess the perspective I wanted to give was, I think bravery begins before you get the brief. Because what I find nowadays is I get to meet with lots of research suppliers, and a lot of them come in and they sit on the fence. They tell me they can do a little bit of everything, which I don't think is very brave. And what happens is, as soon as they've gone out of the door, I've probably forgotten them. And I see probably 3 or 4 a month, so over a year, if you think that's nearly 50 different research companies I might see, I might get a handful of projects over that period of time. So to me, bravery begins by having a really clear positioning of what you do, and importantly, what you don't do. So that would be my opening gambit on bravery.
I would say, as a woman heading into her 40s, that having your picture up on a screen this size is actually much braver than not having your picture up. Nobody wants to see their face that enlarged. You know, I think bravery to me right now is being open to saying that you don't know how to do something or that you don't understand something. And I see a lot of it when I go into meetings, and I do a lot of meetings these days with technology companies, emerging methods, new ways of doing research. And I spend a lot of time asking, well, how do things work? And I think part of our job as researchers is not just to question things, but to really take the time to understand things and to say that it's okay that you don't understand how a particular data set will fit into the bigger picture, or you're not sure exactly what to do with it. And I think, to me, that's something fundamentally that we need to change, that we need to be more collaborative and more open, and to admit that we don't have all the answers.
From a client perspective, I think bravery is in direct relationship with the marketing budgets. And marketing budgets are in direct relationship with the sales. And I think in Europe in the last years, you know, sales were struggling a little bit. So in this sense, yes, bravery is a bit more difficult to push through the organization nowadays. But if you can deliver actionable insights, if you can prove that you have powerful results following brave research, which is never done before, I think you can everybody wants to have a better results. And this, even if the budgets are lower or the same like last year, if you can prove the results, that's a very powerful and focus on what it brings to the bottom line.
Thank you, John. I'm actually going to pick up on what you said, because I'm really interested actually in the relationship between the market research and insight teams and the rest of the organization. And sometimes I wonder, is it the market research insight teams that are not brave enough? Or is it the stakeholders that are not brave enough? And how is it that you can, if you're a brave market researcher within an organization, how can you ensure that bravery goes right the way through to those end strategies which really are business transforming?
I think it's a question of marketing, consumer insight community inside the organization and on the agency side. And it was mentioned earlier today that maybe market research agencies could improve on their marketing side. It's because it's not having a very powerful tool or methodology is not enough to convince the customer. You need to convince him, and events like this is one tool of course. But inside the organization, it happens sometimes that the consumer inside is too much focused on internally and not able to communicate to the top management how the consumer insight is used to deliver better results. And this can happen sometimes within the organization of the customer, of the client.
Thank you. Sean, what do you think from your perspective?
Yeah, I think I'd agree. There's often multiple stakeholders involved, and I think trying to navigate your way through is often difficult. But I think one way through that is not just to concentrate on the sort of the more functional reasons why this is the right way to do it, but to try and inspire. Because I think ultimately, if you can inspire the people in your team and the people, other stakeholders, I think you've got a much clearer passage for a particularly brave methodology to get through. So I think it's thinking about the emotional benefits of what you're trying to do in addition to the more functional, how's this research going to solve our business problem?
Sorry, I'm going to come straight back in again on that, actually, Sean, because one of the things that you said there about inspiring, and I hadn't realized until now that you'd been in advertising, actually, but years ago when I was a planner, I always used to talk about being a pathfinder, because I thought the easy bit was finding the insight. The really difficult bit was getting the creatives, the client, and everyone else behind you. And I wonder whether actually we need to be putting more emphasis perhaps on that part, the socialization of the insights, rather than just on getting the insights themselves. And maybe, Richard or Kristen might have some good examples of how insights have got into organizations from companies that you've worked at.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think one, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying about collaboration, I think you have to find, and this is coming from the supplier side of things, obviously, but you have to find clients that are really willing to partner with you, and that you've been very upfront about, hey, we're really trying something new and different, and really addressing what possible pain points might come from trying something new and different, and how you're going to work through that up front. So it's almost like you looking at the end game, hey, here are all the possible results, and hey, if they're not great, this is what we're going to do to work together to resolve it. I mean, I think that's when I've been the most successful launching new products. It was, how we launched or, landed our first ad testing clients at IIeX. I mean, we were some of the first people doing online research. It was very, very hard to get people to switch, but we really did find those client advocates that really went to bat with us and were really willing to take that initial step.
I think from our perspective, working at Brain Juicer, and I used to work in labs in the R&D part, within Brain Juicer, and we would partner with the maverick clients, as we call them, the brave people on the client side who would be willing to give something a try. Unfortunately, these people are too few and far between, I think. And actually, it's almost a shame that it requires so much bravery for clients to do exciting work. The most innovative organizations have cultures where if you try something new and it doesn't work out, then it doesn't matter, you move on. It's only when cultures manifest themselves that they are so reluctant to change that you require bravery in the first place.
While we're on this matter of working client partnerships, I think we should bring in the procurement word. Let me give you an example. I'm still stinging from a few years ago when, I don't know if it's happened to people here, when I discovered I'd pitched for something for the sum of 40,000, having discovered that the other bids are around 120, 140,000. So there was obviously something wrong with my bid, because obviously the others were spending so much more and wasting so much money. The issue was I was penalized for that, and I had a happy hour trying to figure a way of wasting more and more money to bring me in alongside the other bids. What do we do when procurement seem to want all the bids to be the same as one another? Would anyone speak to that? Where's the bravery there, folks? I'm not bitter.
Actually, we use quite a lot of co-creation and crowdsourcing recently. So we open up outside the usual creative routes, and it worked very well for us. So now we are working with designers from different fields, and we give them the insight, and they come with solutions which we might implement or not, but always it's eye-opening, and I believe it's one of the braveries in action?
You know, I would say that I, as much as possible, try to avoid working with procurement because I don't think you develop relationships with procurement. It's it's a very, very challenging thing to do. And I've had a couple of clients I've started working with, and then the next thing I know, I'm talking to procurement, and I always end up looping back like, hey, you know, there's not a value proposition, there's nothing interesting here in these conversations, and if it's strictly, if all we're bidding on is price, there's nothing more to talk about at that point from my perspective. And so I think it is challenging, and honestly, I see more companies moving away from that model, you know, where it's just strictly based on price and procurement.
There's no one from procurement out there, is there? No.
Death to procurement.
Yeah. I try and find a way around procurement, being sort of, he says, whispering, because I usually encourage, if I have to get a number of different proposals, try and get people to push it and make it a bit different. And I usually have a preferred supplier, and I think, or a preferred option against a particular brief. And I think the issue comes if they're all pretty similar. So I think if you know, various people are answering the same brief, come up with the same solution, then I think it's harder to keep procurement out. But if one particular proposal is clearly different, I think it's easier to say, look, this is the right one for these reasons. And you know, we're the experts in research and insight. We should be able to argue the toss on that. But if they all look the same, then it's very easy for procurement to say, no, go with A because they're 10% cheaper. So that would be my rather cunning way around.
I'd say that, yeah, procurement can be like an innovation immune system. It seems to be deliberately stood in the way of trying something new and different, so it can be a problem. But sometimes if you have this maverick client, this brave client, and they know how to play the political game within the company, you know, like Sean was saying, you know, you can work around it and you can work out how to fill in the boxes. So you tick all the right boxes for procurement and you still do something exciting and interesting. So if you get that really strong client relationship with a brave maverick client, then sometimes the way around this immune system.
I'm going to ask about whether bravery has had a glorious past. Now, what I mean by that is, are we in danger of being nostalgic? That there was a few years ago when there was great researchers that went and did amazing things, and we talk in hushed whispers about the great things they did. Do you think we're enthralled to a kind of glorious past, and we used to be braver than we are now? Who's the brave answer?
Peter just answered that question.
I think in the past we had less data for a start, and we were probably, as a result, there was less to hold us to account. So maybe there was a bit more intuition, a bit more right-brained thinking, a bit more creativity, and maybe that's where you get the bigger breakthroughs. That would be my view.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I was at a event a couple months ago, and I had been talking about some of the work that we do with women in research to promote gender diversity. And a woman came up to me afterward and said, you know, on behalf of all the women in the 60s and 70s, I just want to apologize because we thought we had done all the work we need to do, and now I look at where we are now and we didn't do enough. And so on behalf of my entire generation, I apologize. And it made me think for a minute that, you know, it's like I was very pleased to win the Bravery Award for Gender Diversity a few years ago. But even in my own day-to-day, I feel like I really have to constantly be pushing and asking if I'm doing enough. And I think that's what we have to ask ourselves as researchers. Are we being brave on a daily basis? Are we speaking up when we feel like we're not doing enough with the data, or if a client is making the wrong decision? You know, like I said as part of my intro, I think that bravery is cultivated and practiced. And if you don't practice on a regular basis, that you sort of, if you don't use it, you lose it. Yeah.
I think bravery is linked also to innovation, and in mature markets like Europe, most of the growth is coming from innovation. So you need. I don't think it's less of it. Maybe it's in a different direction. So looking for innovative solutions rather than innovative, creative ideas, or to push old products.
And just to add, I think that during times of economic upheaval and recession, then there's much less budget to spend on creative, innovative, new projects to run with. So it requires more bravery. It really requires an individual to stand up and really push something hard to actually get something exciting through. So during the hardest times that we rely on bravery the most.
Yes,
Come on, Europe.
Europe's hour.
And now the US can sit back and rest.
Well, thank you very much. I've got one final question for our 4 panelists, and I'd like a one-word answer to this one, please, because we are on the final minute at the moment. Where is the greatest need for bravery in market research today?
Procurement.
I think is replacing surveys with listening. I think this is a big, brave move.
Yeah, I would agree with that and just add to it and say I think, replacing primary research with more passively collected data that's actual behavioral data is where we really need to be looking.
Understanding risk and doing it anyway.
Thank you. What I wanted to do, just by way of summary, is if any of this has moved you a whit, it's now your job to be looking for examples of bravery. We've actually had people nominate themselves, come along and say, I was brave, and the judges and panel actually agreed with them. Basically, what we'd like you to do now is to think of examples that you have come across, that you are coming across at this conference, either with colleagues or with even other competitors, suppliers, clients, and so on. The great thing about these awards is that it doesn't matter how long you've been in the business or if you've just come into the business, you can win. I think our youngest winner was 19 years old, and I can tell you more about that afterwards. We've had, you could win whether you work at supply side or whether you work client side. When do clients actually get rewards for being brave? And one of the things that's most exciting about listening to judges talk about this is that particularly the client side judges say, you have no idea how difficult our jobs are, and we want to respect what that particular individual did, because you don't understand as suppliers the difficulties they had to overcome as they work through their own organizations. So here's the way it works. Making nominations, and the nominations will close at the end of April, and a panel of judges will decide which get awards for 2015. We have badges here for the Ginny Valentine Badge of Courage Award. I have one to give away. In the next 24 hours, we'd like you to tweet using the suffix for IIeX EU15 and also hashtag brave. The best suggestion, come to me, this badge is yours and you can join the movement for change. Right on. Thank you very much to our panelists for coming along this afternoon. Please come and talk to us about bravery. This is important. It doesn't work unless we nominate and we actually commend bravery wherever we find it. Thank you very much.